There is much literature in cognitive science, in psychology, and in pedagogy that connects language learning with cognitive development. Because our concern in this program is literacies in the plural, we also want to highlight parallel developments of sophisticated thinking capacities in and through other modes, such as visual symbolization and the development of the same cognitive order as those that occur in language. As a child grows, they acquire language as words which describe the things that happen to be in their world. As they do this, they are turned into concepts which allow for generalizations and abstractions of higher order and lead to adult thinking. This is called cognitive work, and it involves words. In the visual and the spatial modes, we create similarly abstract concepts when we draw diagrams and plans so as to capture aspects of the seen world. These developments in linguistics, in visual and in spatial and other thinking capacities are parallel and complementary.
How do we then talk about a scale of forms of meaning? Okay, so we've got an experiential meaning, and of course all animals can deal with that. A dog knows another dog when they see it, right? It's a dog, and I'm interested because I'm a dog. We can have a concrete representation of that dog, which might be the word Fido, or it might be a picture of a dog, or it might be all sorts of stuff. And actually animals can do a lot of that as well. What animals can't have is the abstract concept of dog in a system which is called animals and so on. And what is even less possible is to understand this dog as a form of representation, a meta-representation if you like, which is to understand have a language to describe symbol systems. Now, in fact, where we get to in schools is we want to get to this highly abstracted, generalizing world of symbol systems where we can call the word dog a noun, where we can build for students a multimodal grammar with which they can build their meanings, because they're a set of tools, if you like, conceptual cognitive tools at a high level of abstraction whereby we can analyse and build things in the world which are useful to us, build meanings in the world which are useful to us. To move on now and to think about this transition, the Russian what do we call him? A kind of a psycholinguist, sociolinguist, it's hard to, child psychologist perhaps might be the best description. The work of Vygotsky actually crosses a lot of these disciplines. So he was a Russian, he died as a very young man, died of tuberculosis, in fact, in the Soviet Union. He's one of these great theorists of this transition that I just showed in the previous drawing. And what's interesting in terms of child development is this shift from indicative thinking through to conceptual thinking. And it doesn't happen at a very young age, but the groundwork is laid at a very young age. So this is the kind of transition that Vygotsky talks about. He says, firstly, young children live in this world of what he calls unorganized congeries, which is inherently unrelated objects, which are linked by chance in the child's perception. They happen to be connected in the world because they're together, and you might even just call them heaps. There's a heap of things in the child's life. There's a couch here, a lounge there, a toy there. They're all together, and they're relatively unrelated in a coherent kind of way. What's interesting, by the way, is the way in which he describes linguistic development is based on a sense of growing forms of perceptual distinction as well. So this distinction between language and perception is an artificial one in a lot of ways. That the development of forms of perception and the development of language in young children happens absolutely simultaneously in a related kind of way. So what the child then comes to do is build things that he calls complexes. So a complex might be, okay, I can see that a table sits beside a chair. There's a concrete factual relationship between tables and chairs in the world. They fit together in this circumstantial kind of way, and they are not abstract and logical relationships. They're just resemblances and associations and things that are together which have a kind of meaning by their visual association. And I use words for them. I might use the word dog, for example, or the word a table and chair, for example, even though tables and the chairs in the world look very different, and even though dogs in the world look very different, depending on what kind they are and so on. I get to use this word, but this word does not yet have a conceptual quality. As the child gets older, and I'm going to get to why literacy is important, academic literacy is important in a second. As the child gets older, these words get replaced by concepts. So what you're able to do is abstract out criterial elements in each of these things, if you like, build definitions of what these things are, which are not just visual associations, this is like this, but become kind of abstractions about what the underlying meaning is. So a young child might see a lot of triangles in the world. That's a triangle, and I'm going to use the word triangle for both because they look alike and I've seen one of these things before. So that's complex thinking. But conceptual thinking means that you know what the criterial features of a triangle are. You know that it's three sides and these are the conditions under which it's still a triangle and this thing is no longer a triangle because I have a definition of triangle. I have an abstract conceptual understanding of what this conceptual event triangle is in the world. So in other words, what happens is, even though the kid has been using the word dog or the word triangle from a very young age, at a certain age, as their thinking develops, the psychological underpinning, the conceptual underpinning, the cognitive underpinning of that word becomes quite different. It gets, if you like, it's deepened. So, by the way, this is a kind of an argument, let me just digress for a second, against purely authentic, purely immersion pedagogies. It's not just a matter of being in a world with a lot of triangles. We have to build your capacity to conceptualize and theorize triangles in this meta-representational sense. We've got to build these cognitive capacities which are above mere immersion experience and being used to things. So this is an argument for a different, a deeper kind of pedagogy. And to go back to our original multi-literacies pedagogy, it's not a matter of just having experiential learning, but you need this conceptual learning going on as well, which involves naming things, and it involves putting the names together into symbolic systems, conceptual systems. Now, those systems might be linguistic systems where, different types of dogs form the category of dog, and dogs are characteristically as follows. But they also might be visual associations, which we do via diagrams and taxonomies. There are all sorts of modes in which this conceptual thinking can be represented across multiple modes. Vygotsky went on then to build an incredibly important, influential theory around something that he called the zone of proximal development. So this is, if you like, a learning theory. So the child knows certain things about the world and can do certain things in the world. We know that, right? And if we just stay experientially with who they are and what they're interested in and whatever, we never get beyond that. But if we want to get beyond that, and we want to get, for example, beyond complex thinking into conceptual thinking, we want to push them into what Vygotsky calls a zone of proximal development. Now, outside of that zone are things that are just too hard, incomprehensible, not thinkable, don't even bother about it because they're not going to get it. But if it's possible to deepen the underlying psychological structure behind a particular unit of meaning, an image or a word, for instance, with a lot of scaffolding and a lot of support and a lot of structure, the teacher can actually work, and the curriculum can work around what the student already knows and build that out. Look, the student already knows what a triangle is, that's a triangle. But they don't know how to define a triangle. Now, outside of their range of whatever is to understand the whole of Pythagoras or something, forget about that. None of us can do that. Well, because we haven't tried, but it'd be a big leap to try. But what we can do is, because they know what triangles are, in that zone of proximal development, we can actually help them develop the concept of triangle, where they can define a triangle by certain constituent conceptual parts and various functions, whatever a triangle is in the world. That's the zone of proximal development. And Vygotsky's theory is this, that the most effective learning pushes you outside of your comfort zone into your zone of proximal development, but not further than that. That's the theory.